Hey guys, it's Max Convexity. Hope everyone's having a great day. Hey, I have a fun one planned for you today. There's a new fund out, and granted, there's a new fund out like every day, right? But I'm serious, this time there's really a new one out. Anyway, Fidelity launched three actively managed funds, and we're going to cover them today. Now, they're pretty new, so there's not a whole lot I'm going to be able to say about them, but uh, but we'll see what we can, and we'll talk about it. All right, so these things are brand new and tiny. I mean, $5 million. That's probably just the seed money. That's probably just what they all get as a minimum that they have to even be a Fidelity fund. Now, Fidelity can afford to open as many funds as it wants, of course, but these things are brand new. I mean, April 9th, I mean, we haven't even got to the 1 month anniversary. Now, Fidelity, on the other hand, we have some history with. They've been around for a long time. Um, and they're the 11th biggest ETF provider in the United States. All right, so they released three products. Let's see. They released a buffered product, FBUF, which is going to be kind of similar to T-Jewel, which I reviewed, but also similar to a lot of other ones that you guys might have heard of before. JP Morgan has a famous JP Morgan hedged equity fund, hedged equity series, and they're the same thing. The thing about hedging is it costs money. So even though they're selling calls to pay for puts, those puts cost money that the selling calls money could have been used to pay a dividend. A hedged equity fund is just a fund. It's just a covered call fund that uses the profits of the covered calls to buy puts with, and it makes it where your stock, theoretically can't drop that far. That's all that is. So I don't really cover hedged equity funds that much because to me they aren't as interesting as the pure volatility and income play of a covered call. But it's really the same mechanism. So this news release says they released Fidelity Dynamic Buffered ETF, which is FBUF, Fidelity Hedged Equity, which is FHQ, which is another type of fund that buys puts. It's another type of fund where the underline's not supposed to be able to drop that far. And then Fidelity Yield Enhanced Equity ETF. Okay, and that is very similar to BALI or JEPI or XYLD. Okay, the option-based ETFs are listed on Cboe and available commission-free for individual investors and advisors through Fidelity's online brokerage platforms. Okay, the launch of these things, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to skip the advertising copy. The portfolio construction aimed, okay, so the strategy levers a multi-factor model to help select companies with desirable fundamental characteristics, including attractive valuations, strong quality metrics. The portfolio aims to keep the fund's risk characteristics similar to those of the benchmarks. And it says here they combine the core equity portfolio with the option overlay. Now, the option overlay is where the difference is. FBUF is a strategy. It's a buffer strategy, but they sell out of the money calls to pay for out of the money puts. All right. FEHQ is a strategy that just strategically buys puts here and there to try to hedge against the downside. I don't really understand that much about it, but they don't sell the calls to buy the puts. They just buy puts. That could be expensive, but they have an algorithm. They have some other stuff they're looking at where they're trying to do it as efficiently as possible. Then FYEE is very similar to XYLD or JEPI. Okay. The portfolio management team comes from the long tenured co-managers, Eric Granat, Anna Lester, George Liu, Mitch Livestone, Sashi Naik. The products are competitively priced, and that's actually true. That's not just ad copy. FBUF and FHEQ is half a bip, 48 bips. But the high yield, just the covered call fund itself, is only 28. I think that's now the lowest covered call fund in the industry. All right, so let's see what else we have. All right, FHEQ, we talked about this already a little bit, but they just dynamically buy the puts. And then, of course, there's FYEE. So this one is the enhanced yield, but this is very similar to the other products I cover, the other high yield products I cover on this channel, like JEPI. All right, so what I was saying about this one, it's not like there's not too many index-based ones out there already, is there? I mean, look, there's JP Morgan, Global X, Morgan Stanley. Those are just the families. Goldman Sachs. One time I said anyway, whatever. But yeah, Morgan Stanley does Bally, not BlackRock. BlackRock has funds on here. I just forgot about them. Ton of funds that do the same thing, where it's a monthly covered call strategy on an index. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. And then, of course, Defiance and Rex also have, covered call products, usually with a little bit shorter time frame. But in any event, we are getting pretty saturated. There's no doubt. But now we have 3 more. The question now is, do I add them to the buffer report or not? I mean, I'm gotten to the point where I almost can't add everything to the buffer report. And some stuff I just don't. Some stuff I'm not even that interested in. The hedged equity and the buffer products don't really interest me that much to cover on my channel. Now, I mean, they're great. They have a purpose, but I like to cover the pure equity, the ETFs that are going for the pure equity, the gigantic monster, monster returns like a Coney, or that's kind of what I'm into. But in any event, let's go to the website, and let's look at this a little bit and see what we have going on here. Okay, so this is the portfolio for the covered call fund. Very much standard portfolio. Not a lot you can learn from that. The only thing I did learn from looking at this at all is the option strategy, because I read the prospectus and the prospectus was not forthcoming. The option strategy, you can see here, they do options in weekly tranches right here. They sell them in weekly expiration cycles. In any event, they use a monthly covered call strategy, a monthly overlay, where they sell the XSP or the XSP, where they sell the index options that get the favorable tax treatment, and they do it on top of their portfolio. Now, the thing I did get out of their prospectus when I read their prospectus is this portfolio right here isn't just your regular portfolio. They change these weightings to try to be as efficient as possible and to try to match different goals. So they try to get these guys, just like JP Morgan and just like Bally, and just like a lot of them, they don't use, not a lot of them, but just like a handful of them, they don't use just the index. Most of them do use just the index. There's a handful starting with JP Morgan. Bally does it too. This one does it. That actually varies the underlying quite a bit, but they still sell index options on it. So they're hoping to get their performance from 2 areas. The index options they're selling will bring in some extrinsic premium, but then they're also hoping that even though they're selling call options and they're capped, they're theoretically capped because they're selling S&P call options, right? So if the S&P goes up 10%, it's gonna cancel, everything's gonna cancel out. However, the theory is with these, when they pick their own portfolio and they have different weightings of the stocks, and they may have more value stocks or whatever, they're hoping to get their outperformance also from their stock selection, and that way, even though the index is theoretically capped by the SPX options, because the underline's not really SPX, you're kind of cheating the system, and you can get some extra alpha out of there. However, if these guys don't do a good job picking their proportions of stocks, they can also have less alpha than a fund that just uses a straight index method. So there's pros and cons for sure. There's pros and cons for sure. But I would expect this to be, a 9, 10%, without knowing anything else, just with, because they didn't even say if they do weeklies or dailies, but they don't. I looked around and they didn't mention the prospectus, but they do monthlies. These guys are just trying to earn a steady 9, 10, 11, 12% on top of what's hopefully, a good portfolio that can hopefully appreciate, more so than just the index, just buying the index blindly. Now, I'm the kind of guy that thinks you can just buy the index blindly and it's about the same difference. But these guys with these big fancy degrees that work at Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and nowadays even Fidelity, I guess, these guys, they run these quant programs and they have all these different factors they're looking at to try to vary what the underlying is. But anyway, more power to them. If these guys can do a good job with that part of the program, the option writing is just an extra profit center, so it's going to be interesting to see. And I'm definitely going to be pulling for these guys. Now let's look. I haven't even checked this, but let's look real quick and see if we can get a stock chart. I thought they were open. Maybe they, well, anyway, maybe they're too new. Maybe you have to be at least a week old to be on TradingView. In any event, all right, guys. Well, the market's not very positive today. Closed on the lows, closed outside the Bollinger Bands and on the lows. And Bitcoin was down 6%. So anyway, it's just kind of one of those days. Now Bitcoin down 6.09%. I mean, that's something else. All right, guys. You guys have a good day. Let me know. Are you guys thinking about putting Fidelity in? Like I was saying, they aren't on the buffer list. And look at this. I'm getting so many on this single name list. I'm going to make multiple charts and stuff. But also, I think you can have too much information. I'd like to maybe just look at the top 10 or 20 of these every night. And, as far as covering goes. But I don't know. I'll have to decide on if I'm going to put these guys on here. And if so, where. Or maybe I need to make an auxiliary. Maybe I'll make an auxiliary chart. All right, guys. Well, you guys, thank you for tuning in. I hope you like this. Remember, this is for research and purposes only, fun and entertainment. Go consult your own, broker or your own financial planner, your own CPA, your own lawyer, your own tax, whatever you have, your own wealth manager, because these are important decisions and too important just to take the advice of some guy on the internet. I think I have good advice, and I think there's other good advice out there on the internet, but I'm not a professional, so I may be wrong. I think, anyway, but yes, definitely do that. I always say this, and I really mean it. A good financial planner is worth its weight in gold, and maybe not so much him, but it's about your relationship with him. But if you have one that knows you, smart guy, and he knows you and he knows your situation, he'll help you wade through all this stuff you hear from people like me on the internet. All right. You have a great day, and I hope you like this video. All right. See ya.